everybody, thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today I'll be taking a look at The Ladies in Waiting by Santiago Garcia and Javier Olivares. This is a book from Fantagraphics that I was really excited to pick up in the Fantagraphics sale, just based on what the art looked like, and then reading it, have become a real big fan of the book. So this is a exploration of Diego Velázquez's life, especially in relationship to his painting Las Meninas, which is, one of the greatest paintings of all time, influenced a number of people, and that's what this book is about. It's in impact backwards and forwards, who influenced it, what was Velázquez up to, a little bit about his life, and then little bits about all the different people that are kind of grappling with his legacy. So you get a bunch of like little short peeks that come together to make a bigger view of the impact of Las Meninas, more than a biography of Velázquez or something like that. And I think that's a really interesting approach. It's more like a kind of conceptual biography of the piece itself rather than anything else. So here we get introduced to Velázquez. We will get introduced to a number of other artists over the course of the book. So I think there is a bit where you kind of have to know a fair amount about who these people are, or else this book could probably be pretty confusing. So I think it's limited itself in that way. But other than that, for someone like me who knows everyone that they're talking about, this is an awesome book. Also, you can see just the art throughout is, really, really stunning. Kind of reminds me of like, Michael Avon Oming. I don't know if that's how his last name's pronounced. A little bit of Dave McKean in there, a little bit of like Munoz, different people like that. But really like the art style. Anyways, we're introduced to Velázquez here, and he's kind of thinking about someone else's painting. He's looking at a Rubens painting. No, he's looking at a Van Dyck painting, Cellini and Endymion. And he's basically thinking like, I have to do something that matches that. Then we get a jump kind of in style, we get color and stuff, and you have an introduction to Foucault here with some of his writing around here, and he's talking about Velázquez. I think my interest in Las Meninas, like my real deep interest in it, comes from Foucault actually, so I was really happy to see Foucault included in here. His introduction, I don't know if this is part of that introduction. This looks like something else. This looks like a different essay, or maybe this isn't Foucault's writing, maybe this is just the writer of the book. I'm not sure. It's been a while, but anyways, the introduction to Foucault's book, The Order of Things, is a piece about Las Meninas, and it's a really, really interesting interpretation of the painting that I think is a pretty good, and I shouldn't say correct, but however you want to get close to that in terms of like a good, proper interpretation that kind of encompasses what's really in the work and what the work suggests. I think that opening piece by Foucault is very interesting, and then he uses that to set up the idea of an artwork that looks back at the audience, and that kind of self-reflexive quality is the beginning of modernism, a kind of art that's self-aware of its situation as an object that's being looked at, or our awareness of ourselves as viewers, the difference between author and audience, all that kind of stuff that Foucault really kind of goes on about in his career. He sets up with Las Meninas, and I've always really liked his interpretation of the painting. I teach it in my classes all the time. It's a really good, talking about directional forces and stuff. So really happy to see that Foucault is included in this. The main kind of biographical story that's running through this, and I'm not so obsessed with Las Meninas that I've done a ton of research, so I'm learning new things about it as well in this book, which is awesome, is that Velázquez really wanted to be a knight, and he's basically being background checked throughout a lot of this book to see if he's fit to be a knight, to be knighted. And he's poo-pooed on by a lot of the other artists in the book for not being a professional artist. He's not like in a guild or something, even though he has this talent that they all kind of admire. He's the court painter, and so somehow that's making him less. So he has this very competitive feeling, and he wants to get that knighthood for a good reason. I like this bit of dialogue here. It is this love kings have for painters that proves that painting is a high and noble art and not some clumsy manual trade, and those who practice at the highest level deserve this highest honor. I like that idea. I like, that it's not just some clumsy manual trade. You can be a clumsy technician of art. I think there's plenty of people out there that do that. But the king here is looking for something different, right? He's looking for something above and beyond. And I think that's really good that we've had patrons like that want something more out of their artist. So here you get some little biographical information about Velázquez's relationship to the king. Velázquez met Philippe IV in the summer of 1623. The king was 18 years old and the painter was 24. And so they kind of have like a special friendship, it seems like. They kind of grew up together in this position. It seems like Velázquez was a friend and a confidant to the king and things like that. Then we jump here. You see the style changes. It's more looking like colored pencil work. Well, not colored pencil, but pencil work that's been digitally colored. This is a young Pablo Picasso. And so you get Picasso here, and he's looking at, he's talking about his ambitions, basically. And here he's looking at a painting called The Culminating Work of Universal Painting. And I don't know off the top of my head what that is, but they're having him look at it to say that's a good measuring stick. So I'm assuming this is supposed to be Las Meninas, is they tell him to look at it because he becomes obsessed with it. And it's like, if you want to, be the person that you're saying you can be, tell me if you think one day you will make something better than this. It's a good measuring stick. And he's sitting there, and they're like, well, the world's going to put him in his place. But we all know that, Picasso will go on to paint Guernica, the Ladies of Avignon, and all these paintings that are kind of competitive with Las Meninas in art history. Going back, you have Velázquez now in the same position that Picasso's in. So it's showing like the history of giants standing on the shoulder of giants, the innovations that someone have made of a great piece of art that have inspired the next generation and obsessed the next person to reach that level or higher. And so you get Picasso getting that from Velázquez, and then you immediately get the lineage back to the Van Eyck-Arnolfini wedding, where he's looking at the mirror in the piece and thinking about the mirror. He wants to make a piece with the mirror. Something about that is kind of coming back to him. And then you meet this character here, who's a dwarf and is kind of like the buffoon for the king, and Velázquez painted him a number of times. So it's cool to see those characters that, if you're a fan of Velázquez, you kind of know their portraits. Like I said, I'm not a historian. I don't read a lot of history and stuff. I spend my time with philosophy. So I don't know who all these characters are in detail, but I know them from the paintings. And so it's cool to see those characters that are familiar from the paintings show up. Here you get some, just some different look at the different types of styles that are employed, or the different spot colors that are used. Really like this illustration here. But this is basically Velázquez has been sent by the king to go look at art, purchase art, things like that. And he's meeting with Peter Paul Rubens, and they go to look at a Titian painting. And I think, God, oh my God, to have sit in on a conversation between Rubens and Velázquez as they talk about Titian, that would be insane. And Rubens is telling him, learn only from the masters, and the masters are in Italy, my friend. So it's like, if you learn from not a master, you're learning bad habits, you're not really going to be the best you could be. Then we jump forward again, and we get Dali talking about the power and the kind of naturalism and chaos of Velázquez painting. That's one of the things about Velázquez, is from a distance it will look photographic, and you get up close, kind of like Rembrandt, it's so chunky and sloppy. That's the magic, right? That especially in painting is the ability of something that's totally chaotic and abstract to resolve to totally realistic, at a glance or at a distance. And I don't know. I haven't seen a ton of Dali's in person, but from the ones I have seen, I can tell you Dali never reached that power of Velasquez. He was an imagist more than a painter, from what I've seen in person. Here you get Goya. Goya's talking about being jealous of Velasquez. So you've seen his influence. I feel so terrible that I was doing a video the other day where I forgot Goya's name, but Kronos Eating Zeus by Goya in the other video will make that correction. You get here a history of trompe l'oeil in painting, which is the attempt to paint things, that could fool the eye, to make things seem like they're there that are not there, and how important that is to illusionistic painting. And so that's what I was saying earlier, is that Velasquez has this, and other painters have this unique ability to make something feel real and present in the room, but when you get up to it, it's not like realistic. It all breaks apart into paint. And I think, as a painter myself, that's kind of the most magic thing a painter could do. The really tightly rendered stuff that still looks like a photograph up close is cool and impressive, but it's just always like that illusion. So I like having the illusion break apart a little bit. Here you get Picasso. He's now in 1957, and he's painted a series of 58 variations on Las Meninas. And you see him here, short, buff little Picasso that he was, walking around with no clothes on, being comfortable, still in his mind trying to paint something as well, better than, he's trying to beat Las Meninas. He's trying to do a painting that's more important than that. And you can see him saying the battle continues with the intensity that Picasso would. Here's a drawing of a portrait by Velasquez. This must have been a ton of fun to do, especially to put it into this kind of stylized mode here. I think is pretty wild. I wouldn't even know how to approach that. But also like that this isn't statted. You can see that the nose is rendered differently. Even though they're generally representing the same folds and stuff, all the rendering is different. And so I like that embeds a sense of time into it. That this character here is staring at it for that long and recognizing different aspects of it. You can see that the background changes a little bit and stuff. If it would have been statted, I don't think it would have had that sense of shift in attention that you get, like the whole jawline changing. That's just like as you focus on different things, maybe here you're focused down here more, and here you're focused on the face more. Like here, these are more clearly rendered, and here they're blurry. So to me, it really does represent this character's attention shifting around the painting while he's looking at it. And he says, it's not a painting, it's truth. And that's something that I think all artists are looking for is, yeah, we would may or may not be trying to set out to make it look realistic, whatever that means, but that you're trying to capture something true. And oftentimes there's deviations from what something looks like the style in here, that can bring you closer to truth, and I think that's really interesting as well. Here he's hanging out with Bernini, talking about Raphael, so another one of those oh my god, could you imagine hanging out with Bernini and Velasquez at the same time, talking about the Raphael? That would be amazing. And then you have a quick little biography of Raphael. So again, going backwards in the influence, and apparently he was a real womanizer. That's interesting. A fun, court drama, just one-off page here, not particularly important to the story, but gives you a sense of, what Velasquez kind of avoiding a debt collector or something like that. Another style change here. We're looking at a character named Barra Vallejo. I don't know who that is, so that one doesn't land as much with me, but another artist that obviously influenced Velasquez. This book is obviously by Spanish authors as well, so they're talking about a legacy, largely, not totally, but you've got Picasso, Velasquez, Vallejo. Obviously Foucault is French, and Van Eyck would be Dutch or something like that. But they're also realizing that there's a big legacy of this in Spanish art, and so they're celebrating the contributions of their culture to the world. And then here you get the king standing in front of Las Meninas. And he's standing in front of the mirror. And Velasquez tells him, now you are in the painting. And the king gets kind of mad about this, because he's saying, are you mocking me? You've painted my portrait without my permission. Like, you're in it. You've put yourself next to me. I told you not to paint me. And then Velasquez says, no man paints a mirror. Nature paints the mirror itself without our hand doing anything. But the mirror reflects the painting, and you're painting the painting. I've always thought about Las Meninas in terms of the reflection of the king, and this is what Foucault says, is that the king and queen in the mirror are the audience looking at the painting. So the mirror in the painting is kind of a eyeball looking back at the viewer. And that if you stand in front of the painting at the proper viewing distance to see it all at once, you would be at the place that the king and the queen are at. Like, they've done studies, they can reverse the perspective of the room and figure out where you would have to be standing to show up at this size in this mirror. And it would be where you would have to stand for this painting to be seen all at one glance. Like, this character's too close, they'd have to look around to see it all. But here you even get Velasquez saying, now you are in the painting. And so that's the thing that Foucault talks about, is that there's this like spiral, there's a compositional spiral through here that leads you to the mirror, and then the mirror spirals back out at you, and that this is the first painting that wasn't just looking through a window to a world beyond the picture plane, but it was like the first kind of virtually immersive experience where the audience was to be understood as part of the space that they were looking at. What I had never considered is that the entire painting can also be seen, and this is what the king, I think, is suggesting, and Velasquez is saying back, is that I didn't paint you, I painted your reflection in a mirror. Not only did I paint your reflection in the mirror, but actually it's the reflection of a reflection, potentially. So imagine that the painting is supposed to represent a mirror on the wall that Velasquez is looking at. He set up a big mirror, and all of this stuff then would be in reverse in the mirror. So you see, like he's here showing, is that the way he would look in a mirror if you're right-handed though? No, I feel like it would show up on the other side. So maybe that argument falls apart. I'm not sure unless Velasquez was left-handed. But anyways, the idea that the surface of the painting is also potentially supposed to represent the surface of a mirror, that's something I hadn't considered before. So that this is like a mirror reflecting in a mirror is an extra kind of strange addition to the story. I don't know, I'd have to look more into the hand. That could be a giveaway, or maybe he was correcting things, I'm not sure. But it's interesting. It's an interesting idea, at least, to present a painting as a mirror rather than a window. I know, obviously there's a mirror in it, but for the whole thing to be a mirror is really compelling. So this book expanded my idea of maybe what's going on in that painting, which is really cool. Here you just get kind of some different, like, celebrating what there is to see in Spain. Some of the different ways that Las Meninas has been like commercialized over the years, to sell and be a cultural icon, get tourism and things like that. Then here you get like the reverse kind of view of like, okay, we're looking at Velasquez now not in the mirror, and we're actually seeing all of the people behind him, and that's where you have all these giants standing on the shoulders of giants. And you have this looks like Francis Bacon to me, even though he's not addressed in the book as far as I saw. Picasso, you've got Foucault back here. I'm assuming that this is Santiago and Javier, the author and the artist of the book, back here. I don't know who all of these people are because they're not all addressed in the book, but you're obviously kind of getting all these people looking over his shoulder trying to compete with him still, saying that's how important this is. And then here's another piece I didn't know. Also a really just nice, more realistic sketch of him in the painting. But here they're making a note of the title, and it says The Lady Empress with Her Ladies and Dwarf. And in the previous page, you get this character in 1843 thinking about the painting and thinking it needs a better name. it says the family of Felipe IV. I'm not impressed by that title. I have an idea for a different one. It's more resonant. So it seems like Jose de Madrazo and Pedro Madrazo were the ones who came up with, or at least Jose de Madrazo is the one who came up with the title Las Meninas, just the ladies, I believe, or I don't know what that translates to, but Velasquez's title for it is the Lady Empress with her ladies and a dwarf. So that's interesting too, because we do kind of think of these things like this is what the artist titled it. That is what it is, and these things do change over time. People retouch paintings, people put extra things on them, they cover up penises, they cover up whole paintings in the case of some paintings, the Vermeer being a good instance recently. So there's just, it's a really rich view of the life and influence of an important piece of art here. And that's why I like how this is approached as not a biography of Velázquez. Obviously, Velázquez's biography is a part of it, but it's about the painting and the impact that the painting had on the world. Also, just flip to this and noticed incidentally, this is a recreation. Even though we get a pullback here, again, this is actually really smart. I hadn't noticed this while I was reading it, but a pullback, you're actually seeing Velázquez painting his portrait of the Pope, and that's also a fantastic painting, and that little bit right there is the painting. So that's pretty cool. That would be, like I said, the biggest kind of criticism of the book is that in its wealth of research and information, if you don't know all of these names that are being referenced and stuff, there's not enough context in the book to piece it all together. So I do think this would be a pretty rough read for somebody who doesn't know all the players involved. And there's obviously, you can see, there's a number of them, and they each get their own little 1 or 2 pages here or there. So it could be hard to follow if you didn't have, like, I didn't know who this character was. I'm assuming after reading it, this went on to who Velázquez's wife was. So for someone like me who likes the painting, talks about it to some extent with my students, but is not an art historian, so doesn't know all the biographical details, I have enough of a toe in the door here that when I run into a character I don't know, it's actually like, oh, let me go look that person up. Who is this? Oh, this is, okay, I think it's his wife. So for me, it's like reading a dense book that I can mostly understand what it's saying, but I have to go look a couple words up in the dictionary. I think for some people, the just lack of any kind of basis for grabbing onto this would be a barrier. And it's just not intended for those people, right? Like, that's not who the artist was trying to speak to, so that's fine. But they did limit their audience in that way, which, it's a book coming out from Fantagraphics, like, you're not expecting it to sell 60,000 copies or whatever. But I do think, that it's something to consider, like, especially when you're doing something like this that could be educational. Can you do it in a way that's approachable to a general audience? Because then I could take this and have students read it and do a report on it or something. But I wouldn't do that with this book unless there was some heavy research component about, find someone in there that you don't know and find out about them, or something like that. So maybe a little limiting in the audience, but for the audience that's obviously being targeted, this is a phenomenal book. I really enjoyed it, been thinking about it a lot, love the art. So all thumbs up, plus my 2 big toes on this one. If you enjoy what we're doing here on the channel and want to support us, there's 2 different ways to do that. The first is through our Patreon. We have 2, how many different ways can I do 2 with my fingers? We have 2 tiers on Patreon. The first tier, I have very expressive pinkies. That's what someone said about a video. So at the first tier, you can just get early access to the videos. At the second tier, you can get exclusive previews of the books that Shauna and I are working on, as well as the ability to participate in our ongoing webcomic experiment, Pronede, where you can help vote and control what happens in the story. So we really appreciate that. Any of the money we get from the Patreon just goes back into purchasing the books that we review. So we put that into other publishers and creators' pockets, and just trying to keep the whole channel rolling. If you want to support what Living the Line is doing and the kind of Living the Line mission, then it'd be best to support what Sean's doing with Living the Line Publishing. So we'll go ahead and take a look at one of the books you could get from the Living the Line now. The Eisner nominated The Strange Death of Alex Raymond by Dave Sim and myself. This is a gorgeously illustrated and designed book. Dave doing most of the illustration. Amazing compositions throughout. What Dave is doing is he's recording his obsession with the death of master cartoonist Alex Raymond behind the wheel of Stan Drake's car when they got into a car crash. The best description of the book that I've heard is that it's like understanding comics with pages like this, mixed with something like From Hell when you get into the theories about what actually happened with the car crash. And then with Sean on production, it's just one of the most gorgeously printed books you could get a hold of.
Like and subscribe and hit the bell, please, so Carson can finish reading his books and let me go home.